Okay, I know I'm a little bit late to the game when it comes to this whole DC Future State thing, but let's face it, it's a lot to take in. There's a lot going on, and we aren't even finished month 1. I believe we have 2 weeks worth of titles at the time of me recording this, of which I've purchased maybe half of them. So I waited to make a video because I wanted to understand it more. So join me in my frothy mug of justice juice as we dive into some of my initial thoughts on DC Future State. That's good. Now, the books that I have been reading, I can't afford them all. They're expensive, and I'm not made of money. I mean, I might look like a rich guy, but I'm really not. And so I can only afford so many books. So I've picked up Superman of Metropolis, Dark Detective, The Next Batman, Justice League, Superman Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, is that it? And Kara Zor-El Supergirl. Those are the titles that I've read. Really kicking myself in the keister for not picking up the Wonder Woman title. I ended up reading that one online, and it's a fantastic little read. She's such an interesting character. I really like Yara Flor, but I'm also really glad that she's not going to replace the main continuity Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. I really think that she needs to remain where she is. And judging by the imagery that we've seen going forward, for what happens after Future State, yeah, she's going to be completely there and intact. But I really, really enjoyed the little Yara Flor story in issue 1, how they started that. She's a sassy character, this Brazilian Wonder Woman. The artwork was absolutely fantastic. Out of all the books that I've read so far for Future State, that one had the very best artwork as far as I'm concerned. Simply stunning. But so far, yeah, I really like Yara. She's a little bit of a loose cannon. She doesn't put up with crap. My favorite Yara moment so far is when she's fighting this Hydra, and then she sticks her sword in it and then flies by on her winged Pegasus, Jerry. Right? The Pegasus name is Jerry. And when she pulls the sword out, she goes, yoink! And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm glad she's going to be sticking around. And in general, it's nice to see that the Wonder Woman family of characters is seeing an expansion. And let's face it, the Wonder Woman family going forward is probably going to be really interesting. I really hope that they don't screw this up and that Yara remains to be an interesting character that they continue to use on a pretty consistent basis. I hope that she doesn't get relegated to backseat. Now, out of the 2 Batman books, The Next Batman and Dark Detective, I gotta say that The Next Batman was good, but I don't have anything invested in Tim Fox. If Luke Fox had have became a Batman, that would have been cool. Or really, I would have liked to see Tim Drake become the Batman in Future State, but they had different plans for him. So at the very least, Luke Fox as Batman would have made more sense to me. So having this fella here, I don't really know him from a hole in the wall, so why do I care? I'm supposed to care about him because he's wearing a bat symbol now? He has to grow on me more, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I definitely really like what they're doing with Bruce Wayne in this. And remember, none of this stuff is set in stone for the future of DC. That's number 1. And then number 2, this is like Bruce Wayne will be the Batman. He'll still be the Batman going forward, as far as I understand it. So this is all just like a temporary way of them telling a story that they can't tell otherwise. And it's an interesting story because Bruce Wayne is dead officially. Batman is dead officially. Where's his fortune? It's gone. He doesn't have no fortune. It's just himself, his wits, and a really, really stripped down batsuit. Just the bare bones. But I can tell that they're gearing up to tell a very interesting story. Now for the Super Family title books, so far I've got my hands on Superman of Metropolis, Superman Wonder Woman, which is technically 50% a Wonder Woman book as well, and I've also bought Kara Zor-El Superwoman. 3 very different titles, and so if you didn't know that all these stories happen on a timeline that is really stretched out, which makes it nothing like DC 5G. It's a much more stretched out timeline. I could see how the average person would get possibly a little bit confused here. Like Superman of Metropolis is a John Kent who has had the role of Superman passed on to him, and he's younger. And I really get a New 52 Superman vibe from him. Not his look, which is capeless, by the way. Where's his cape? but it's really his attitude and how he deals with things. I really feel like I just feel like I'm looking at New 52 Superman. Interesting story, butts heads with Kara. I don't want to completely wreck it for you. It was an interesting book. The artwork was actually quite fantastic in it. And you've got a very interesting way that Brainiac is involved in this story too. Where it all goes in the end, how it all fits together, if it's even going to come together and tell a reasonable story. As always, it remains to be seen. But so far, I'm definitely going to continue buying the Superman and Metropolis book. And then you flash forward 20 years and you have the Superman Wonder Woman book. An interesting title indeed. We get to see more of Yara Flor and how her character behaves and what she's like. And then we have a very different John Kent compared to the Superman of Metropolis. He's older. Whatever chip he had on his shoulder when he was younger, 20 years ago, it seems like he's dealt with a lot of that stuff. Currently at this point, there's no Justice League as far as I understand it. But John is still doing his Superman thing. He takes it very seriously and loves his job. Because every morning at the same time every day, he goes up into the sky and writes in the clouds, "Good morning, Metropolis," with his heat vision, just so that they will all know he's there. But the way that he thinks, the way that he behaves, very calculated, very hopeful as well. He really just reminds me of Clark. I don't really see John when I read this. If no one told me, if the book didn't tell me that this was John Kent that I was reading about, I wouldn't have had any way of knowing. Oh, and interestingly enough, Solaris is the big bad for this title, at least so far. What's been revealed so far, Solaris, a la DC 1 million, is the big bad. I'm interested to see where this goes. I will say this, though. The artwork is just but ugly. It's just some ugly-ass artwork. It just doesn't look right. It's not even consistent. Now, the Justice League title is pretty good. It shows a younger Justice League with these new cast of characters. Like you have your non-gender binary Flash. You have a completely different Aqua character. It's actually Arthur Amara's daughter. She's playing the role that Aquaman used to play in the Justice League. Of course, you have Yara Flor. You've got John Kent taking on the role of Superman. There's an entire different cast of characters that, for the most part, we know nothing about them, right? You got the next Batman, he's in the Justice League. And so the question is, why do we care about these characters? That doesn't mean it can't be a good book. It just means I personally probably would have been more invested in a Justice League that had 50-50 new characters to legacy characters. My interest is definitely peaked. I'm definitely going to keep buying the books because it's a completely different Justice League than what we know. The foundation of the Justice League that we all know and love is Diana, Bruce, and Clark, and they have this strong, tight-knit, interwoven friendship. They have dinner together over at the farm, at John and Martha Kent's farm. They were a little family themselves that cared about each other. It was very much a family with Barry and Hal, or John, depending on what time you are in the League's history. You know, you got John Jones, Arthur. The League was this tight-knit group. And at this point in DC Future State's timeline, the Justice League there's been a new charter, and the Justice League are not allowed to fraternize or be friends outside of their League duties. They're supposed to come together, save the world, and then bugger off back to doing their own stuff, which, that hurts my heart. That hurts me deeply, but I understand why they're doing it, and I'm certainly interested to see if the League will grow into a group of characters that realizes, no, even though the old League changed the charter and made it so we're not really supposed to fraternize, were they wrong to make that decision? It is the idea that we care about each other on a very personal level. Does that make the League stronger? I kind of got a feeling that's where they're going to go with this, but I don't know. Judging by the fact that there's no Justice League by the time we get to Superman Wonder Woman tells me maybe it doesn't turn out that way. I don't know. And then there's Kara Zor-El Superwoman. It's probably the strangest, most kind of off to the side title out of all the ones that I read. It's a Supergirl. It's a Kara who has embraced who she is, and she's accepted her role and her place in life, and she's living on the moon looking after these people who are essentially refugees. They have really nowhere else to go, and she's their protector. She's looking after them. So, very Kara. I like that. But after reading the book, I just found myself asking, where's this going? Like, what are their plans for this? And finally, the Green Lantern book. I certainly like the Green Lantern book. The artwork in it is fantastic. There ain't no power in them rings because the battery is dead. The Yellow Lantern Corps is still doing their thing. Apparently they've still got power in their rings, but the Greenies don't. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it happened. I just know that the first issue was kick-ass. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of action. You got the Lanterns holding their ground against insurmountable odds without their rings. I wonder how it all happened. They really don't give you any answers in issue 1, but I'm definitely piqued. I actually enjoyed that book very much. So now that I've bumbled my way through all of my thoughts about DC Future State, having experienced some of the books for the first 2 weeks, what do I think about DC Future State? Is it good or is it garbage? Well, I guess that depends on who you are and what you want your DC universe to be like. DC Future State is DC Comics' way, amongst other things, of saying this is what we want the future of the DC universe to look like going forward into the future. For example, the DC universe has always been pretty darn diverse. I mean, it started, of course, for example, with pretty much all white characters, because that's who was writing the books. And people write characters that are kind of a mirror of how they're feeling or who they feel like they wish they could be. But then once we got to a point where more and more black characters started being introduced and Asian characters started being introduced and characters of different sexualities started to be introduced. And for the most part, fans, we usually accept that. I mean, Jessica Cruz being the first female Green Lantern who was also Hispanic, we embraced her with open arms. Obsidian being a homosexual character, most people didn't bat an eye. I feel like people that read comic books for the most part are fairly open in their thoughts because they're fictional characters, and really it's about writing an interesting character. As long as you are not sacrificing well-loved characters who have paid their dues over the years on the altar of forced diversity, I say it's a good thing. I say more of it. I think that's fantastic. It's never a bad thing to have more representation of more of the people who read comic books going forward. I guess to boil down what I'm trying to say into a nutshell is I really hope that DC, being as diverse as it seems like it's trying to be going into the future, really comes out of a place of purity, and they really have an honest desire to represent more people, but with the foundation of every character that we create that is of a diverse background. The foundation must be their backstory, and then the stories that we tell with that character that gives them the value as a character. They need to be valuable as a character first, for their exploits and for their character traits first, before they're a character who is liked or despised based on their gender identity or their sexuality or their religion or their ethnicity. Their character and deeds need to shine forth first. However, when it's forced diversity just for diversity's sake and it reeks of pandering, it never works out well. It never bodes well. Just look at Doctor Who. Just gonna leave that one there. That's a disaster. They changed the canon for no other reason, just to do it. Just to be like, ha, the future is female, and so's the past. Sucker! There was definitely a diversity agenda there, and it wasn't about the storytelling. It was just about the diversity agenda, and that's a fail. Anyway, super friends, I think I've said enough. Perhaps I've said too much. I'm gonna leave it here. Like the rest of you, I'm just a schlub that reads comics. Not that you're a schlub that reads comics. I don't have an inside source is what I'm trying to say. And I come to my own conclusions after I read them. And I'm not even a really smart guy. There's plenty of people that do this way better than I do. You could check out their videos. If you've made it this far, damn, you're a trooper. Thank you for making it this far. And I guess I'll see you at the next one. Have a super awesome DC day, everybody, and take care.